No, jeszcze raz dobro.
Good morning once again, dear ladies and gentlemen. I am happy to greet you today at our meeting and discussion about future of mobility. All of us would like to give you a chance to see as ministers in this hall and in this format, but I'm calling you to actively participate in our discussion. And I would like to tell briefly about the rules. Each of our speakers, beginning from the first speech and the first issue, they have only 3 minutes. And in the beginning, I would like to give the floor to the General Counsel in Yekaterinburg of the Federal Republic of Germany, Mr. Poptokaya. You're welcome. Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, good day.
Der Mobilität eröffnen zu können.
Уважаемые дамы и господа, я очень рад сегодня присутствовать на открытии очень интересного пленарного заседания.
Mobilität ist einer der Megatrends neben Urbanisierung, Globalisierung, Individualisierung, Digitalisierung.
Mobility is a mega trend of today, along with such developments as urbanization, individualization, and digitalization. These trends make and support our society and also influence the society for the next dozens of years. Now I would like to name a number of facts and dates related to the process of mobility.
Zum Beispiel pendelten in Deutschland 2017 60% der Arbeitnehmer im Schnitt 16,8 Kilometer.
The requirements to mobility are higher and higher. For instance, in Germany, the employees in 2017, around 60% of employees have to make around 80 kilometers before they reach their job, their working place. This figure in the year 2000 was only 53%. And the length was 14,6 kilometers.
Im Jahr im Stau. Kosten, die durch Staus entstehen, werden in den USA auf jährlich 120 Milliarden Dollar geschätzt.
In the United States of America, on average, each person spends around 40 hours a year in traffic jams, and costs related make around 120 billions of dollars in the United States.
2,2 Milliarden Passagiere, 2017 waren es schon 4 Milliarden.
In 2009, the passengers of air traffic made 2.2 billion people, and in the year 2017, this figure reached around 14 billion people.
Ökologische Folgen, Flächennutzung durch Verkehrsinfrastruktur steigt, drohender Verkehrskollaps an Knotenpunkten fordert effizientere Nutzung, unter anderem intelligente Vernetzung verschiedener Systeme und dezentraler Datenaustausch.
Certainly, these processes are related to certain problems. Many feel additional burden and additional load on environment. A bigger number of areas, spaces are taken by transport infrastructure. There are certainly certain dangers of the collapse for traffic knots, and there should be a smart collaboration of traffic systems. Unmanned systems increase the efficiency and safety. What does it provide for the use of the transport systems in the future? In micromodal sense of this word, the transport means only with two wheels are used more and more, e-bikes and electro-rollers. In the intermodal sense, more and more people are changing their cars, their vehicles during the day, and every day they're using either a bus or railway, a rented car or bikes, and there is an integration of various systems. In multimodal sense, there occurs a permanent change and a flexible change of vehicles. Those who today choose railway or metro, they combine this with a bike, and in the evening they rent a car to get to a theater. What does it mean for the development of an infrastructure? Infrastructure, transport means and roads combine and have sensors which can report to humans. The problems may be diagnosed beforehand. They may be planned. The time of repair may be planned, and the moments when a vehicle may collapse are also identified. The infrastructure allows the means to communicate between themselves. One car may send information to another car about the condition of the roads. These were several ideas of mine for this topic. I wish lots of interesting discussions today. We have very interesting speakers today. Wish you a lot of success. Thank you. In the beginning, I would like to ask one question to those who are present here. Who knows and remember the project called Nucleon? One person knows. Please come to the microphone, closer to microphone in front of you, and explain us what Nucleon is. If I get you right, we are speaking about the car with a nuclear reactor as an engine. Wonderful. In 1960s, the managers in America, they have represented in Detroit a new project for mobility, for the future of mobility, that we are not going to drive cars or vehicles with classical engines, but we will use a small nuclear reactor, which in fact can allow us driving 10,000 kilometers. And why I am speaking about it now? Because then what sounds very strange to us nowadays, many people believed in it then. And there was a lot of euphoria in mass media and among the specialists. First question is to Stefan Teuchert, CEO of BMW Group Russia. How do they look at this situation where many of us think that very soon we are going to use unmanned cars without drivers, without a wheel to manage the car? May it happen the same way as it happened with Nuclear project, or there is another situation now? How is it going to look? The mobility, how is going to look in 10 years? Please, you're welcome. And again, I remind you about 3 minutes only.
Good morning from me as well. You are right, there are many trends in the market and not all of them can become reality.
Because the infrastructure is not there. If we come to autonomous driving, I really have to say this looks much more realistic because many companies at the moment are working on that, not only BMW. And you can even see it in reality already today. If you drive a new 5 Series or a new 7 Series, for many years, you can see partially autonomous driving in the car. So I used it from Munich to Berlin, 600 kilometers, and I could only keep 2 fingers on the wheel out of security. But the car was driving itself, and it was really supportive and a pleasure. But this is also a challenge for the automotive industry because we see in the next 10 years more changes than we have seen in the last 100 years. And in the history of BMW 102 years, I have to say now is the most exciting time because we have 2 or 3 trends. One trend is electrification. So we really go in regards of electrification, and you see already the electric cars on the streets. And independent of the support of the government, there are more registrations or less. So in markets like Nordic, you see a lot of electrified cars. Also in small markets like Thailand or Malaysia, you have meanwhile a share of 40 up to 60%. And in markets like Germany or Russia, electrification is still in the baby shoes. So which means we have to look at the legislation. And if it comes to autonomous driving, the main problem is not the technology. Technology is ready. We make race donuts on the racetrack, full autonomous already today with our cars. But if you want to drive that cars on the road, who is responsible? What's about insurance? What's about legislational rules? How can these cars collaborate with regular cars? How can they be integrated into the traffic? But most exciting will be also if we will drive autonomous, what we are doing with the free time in the car. So how the entertainment will look like. Now just imagine you come with your iPhone to the car, and independent to your personal taste, you have interior changed to your personal music, to your personal pictures, to your video stream. You can look Netflix or whatever. So there are many things you can do, and you can work or you can just sleep. So a bright future in front of us, and therefore I believe autonomous driving and electrification are the 2 trends for the future which are very realistic.
Спасибо. Просто идеально.
Thank you. Just perfect. 15 seconds left, so you are just on time. And I now give the floor to Mr. Manfred Eibeck, who is board member and director of a gas group. And I would like to ask what are latest developments in a gas group, existing gas group in the mobility area, and what digital technologies or innovations do you have? Which of them are already applied and which are planned to be applied at your plants?
We are a Russian manufacturer, we are a Russian OEM, and digitalization, of course, is part of our product strategy. And if we look at it, and I think Herr Teuchert described the whole sphere. We are working in all of these, and I want to go a little bit in the implementation mode. What can you expect from GAS on that? First of all, we are launching, as we speak, our GAS Connect. GAS Connect is being added to the ERA GLONASS system. It is available in the vehicles free of charge as of June in the Gazelle Next Van. We are rolling it out to the other models at the end of that year. So GAS Connect is basically an app which you have on your mobile phone or on your computer, and you can see vehicle data. You see your fuel consumption. You see how much fuel is left. You see the cooling temperature. Then you can have a fleet service system which is giving you data about where the vehicle is currently, where the driver is with the vehicle, if he stops, if the ignition is on. You all see that from a remote site. And we are adding to that services like fuel cards, like smart insurance. All that is available, and we are implementing that currently. And by the end of the year, we will have that added with the first Russian fleet management system. So you can plan your routes. You can give the driver exact guidance, what he should do, what he shouldn't do. We estimate around 20% cost saving on total cost of ownership with that. The second is the electrification of the vehicles. We have certified our electric Gazelle platform already. That is available. We are working on an electric bus. That bus is also connected, digital. We have a multiplex system implemented in Moscow, giving 300 parameters to the depot for optimization of the routes, for understanding how the bus is loaded, how it should be optimized, and for preventive maintenance in the night. So you see already what you've got to maintain when the bus is coming back into the depot on the night shift. On unmanned vehicles, since 2008, GAS was participating in Robocross, which is an initiative, worldwide, Russian-wide initiative. We could train 70 students. Basically, we hired these, and they are now working on implementation of our ADAS, so Advanced Driver Assistance Systems, plus unmanned vehicle. And that Electro Gazelle, you can watch driving on our test track. In
30 seconds left.
30 seconds left. We work in collaboration with NAMI, with technical universities, and we see that that is being implemented soon. Commercial vehicles are probably the first ones which will drive unmanned. As you can plan the roads, you can implement the infrastructure, and that will be the implementation, and GAS will be part of it.
Спасибо большое.
Thank you very much. Next to me, thank you very much. Next to me, there is my colleague Sven Vlasov. He is the general manager of the German Engineering Federation, which is a powerful and very respected organization in Germany and over the world, and includes approximately 6,500 members. And I know that you, in your headquarters, have a special department which is working out the issues of transport and mobility in the department which is doing this. Could you please tell us what issues in this field your colleagues are working on now, and what are the most topical issues there? In the first place, thank you very much for warm words in our address. 6,500 people is maybe too much. We have 3,250. 6,500 sounds very well, suddenly. In the aspect of mobility, this is certainly a big issue for us. It does not relate to some issues, to some topics like tool manufacturing, but in the fields like construction machinery, trucks, railway, airplanes, and cargo transporting, certainly this topic, mobility, is on the first place. And there is a whole number of issues which the members of our association work on, various meters, because the mobility of the future requires all kind of measuring. In the mode of real time, there should be network technologies. They have to communicate between one another and also communicate with some stationary equipment. And one of the mega trends certainly is unmanned driving. And certainly a very important issue is the issue of engines, because the carburetor engine may be used for another several dozens of years, but perhaps later there will appear some problems, and we have to think of some other solutions. And certainly one of the key topics for engineers is environment. In Germany, it is very well developed because our politicians are fond of these issues of environmental issues, and all the politicians and all the engineers who work on mobile machinery have to focus the major part of their resources on this field. I do not want to criticize anyone. Environment is very, very important, but nevertheless, we would like to focus more on some issues which will allow us later to earn money and earn new markets. It would be also great. These are the main topics we are dealing with. Thank you very much, and I would like to now to proceed to the field of agriculture. Mr. Pendish, the General Director of GLARS in Russia, and I remember that several times in mass media related the FIFA championship, it was mentioned that one German person on his tractor came to Russia to the championship. It was the last century tractor, but my question is very simple to you. How the future tractor will look? Is it going to be unmanned tractor? Is it going to be unmanned?
Yes, thank you. Agriculture is an extremely interesting area and industry, and a very dynamically developing one. So we're paying a lot of attention to agricultural machinery building. Ironically, no one wants to work there. Everyone wants to eat, but no one wants to work in agriculture. So we need to create machinery to make the workday interesting and worthy, and making it possible to come home after an 8-hour workday and communicate with your wife, because we need to improve the demographics and so on. And agriculture, just like the industry, we are talking about agriculture 4.0, and some of the trends were already mentioned. One of these trends in agricultural machine building is unmanned driving. And of course, it requires the machinery be able to orient in the space. And the difference from cars and trucks is that agricultural machinery is mostly moving in the field without any roads. So we need satellite navigation and programs like that, software. Another difference of agricultural machinery from other machinery, including cars, harvest, for example, only 20% of the operators' work is driving. The rest is adjusting the system to provide good harvest and fuel consumption and so on. And speaking about fuel consumption, I'm moving to the second trend, which is electrification or changing the drive itself. So we're using gas fuel and electric drives. But since we need high capacity, we need big accumulators. And unfortunately, accumulators of such capacity are not yet available. And according to our estimates, they are going to be available only by 2025. As for gas, that's another interesting kind of fuel, but you need to place gas tanks somewhere, making the machinery heavier. I have half a minute left. And the third trend is agriculture as a service. A farmer only buys the time of equipment operation that they need. They are not buying the machinery per se. It's like leasing a car, renting it, and it's going to be in agriculture as well in the future. And the fourth trend is digital technologies, and a lot is required here. Firstly, everything must be automated inside a harvester, and the machinery must be able to communicate with each other. Very complicated processes beyond human interference. And the farmer is just sitting at the screen, and he sees where his machines are moving. So if you can imagine 20,000 to 200,000 hectares, it's almost like a country in its own right. We are solving these problems nowadays, and our company offers FarmNet 360 systems. It means they're year-round, and they must be open and available to all manufacturers. And this is the requirement for all manufacturers nowadays. Very interesting. Dr. Rolf Epstein is Global Account Manager in Siemens. But we also know that recently in 2017, they opened Siemens Mobility Service Center at a Moscow railway depot. We know and we assume that Siemens is always sharing the advanced technologies with Russia. So in general, what is happening in your service center?
Thank you for praising our company. It's very nice, and I would like to draw your attention to the technical means which are used here, our trains Sapsan and Lastechkas, and for servicing these trains we have opened a data center in Moscow, which is collecting the information during the driving of these trains by various meters. There are several thousands of meters on Sapsan, which is accumulating the data on various technical conditions of the train, and through this internet, this data is transported to this database. And when a train arrives to depot, it will be easily checked what spare parts have to be changed or serviced, and at the depot they know in advance what has to be checked, and it is the service on condition. It's prevention, and it saves time of service, and it makes the servicing cheaper because we are not changing the elements which may continue their service inside a train. And speaking about digitalization, it is for us that we are trying to unify various systems. a lot of information which we are collecting based on the condition of the infrastructure, for instance. You have heard already in relation to the cars that the cars may transfer the information about the traffic jams, and our train gets the information on the state, on the condition of the infrastructure. It measures the bumps and the vibration based on which we can follow the condition of the infrastructure. On the other hand, we are measuring the electricity which is necessary for changing the railway tracks, and we can identify how long it may serve and when it's going to be out of service, and we can service it on the prevention basis. So all these relations and collecting of this data helps us to improve the service. It was exact 3 minutes, wonderful. Ivers Taurinch, the General Director of Schenker in Russia. Very often we can hear about Uberization of transport business. And many people are thinking about taxi in this relation, about small cars, and how you see your business in this respect. You are dealing with cargo transportation and how fast it may change in this area and what it means for Schenker. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. First of all, speaking about Uberization, we know as users of taxi, this technology also works here successfully. We have to understand here that, in principle, there are two bigger markets here, B2B and B2C. Uberization, in our understanding, is more the B2C market, and the development of this segment and development of Uberization on this market was influenced in the first place by the development of the user's internet, so to say. Everyone has a gadget, has an application, and it creates an infrastructure for a user. The second thing is the sharing economy development, where we or people together can use their own means for providing services to one another. For instance, Airbnb is one of the options, the resource which is owned by a certain person is used for the business purposes. And initially, the idea of Uber is the same, to use your own transport and make and share the use of these cars. But the even more serious development of this direction is that it helped to regulate the demand and requirement, the demand and offer, because it was very, very difficult to move the resources which are owned for providing a service. If we are looking at the market of cargo transportation, B2B market, then Uberization there is not that successful as yet, because Uberization was already long ago there. The logistical business, the business of logistical operators, is based on the consolidation of resources. Uship, one of the companies, 30 seconds left. We can call them as an option of Uber. In 14 years of their existence, they have reached the turnover of 2 million euro, which is not that big. So correspondingly, we as logistical operator, we are using Uberization in setting up an infrastructure for our suppliers. And Schenker, for instance, is using the system Drive for Schenker, where there are many transporters are registered, and based on the requirement, they already play as transporters of certain cargoes. Thank you. Dmitry Kapishnikov, the general manager of KUKA company in Russia. And we have already advanced to the initial point of our discussion. Could you please tell us, KUKA, you are producing industrial robots for automobile producers. Could you please tell us about the plans of your company in modernization of Russian Innoprom auto industry? Maybe you can bring some definite examples.
Thank you for your question. Indeed, KUKA is celebrating a small anniversary of contributing to the Russian automotive industry. 50 years ago, we supplied the first automatic line to KAMAZ manufacturing. Most of the Soviet giant plants of the time, Gaz, Avtovaz, KAMAZ, Izhavto, and so on, were automated at the time. Some of the lines are still in operation, unfortunately, I suppose, because that shouldn't be the case, or they should be upgraded at least. But that's the historical perspective. As for today, one of the mega trends we are seeing is customization. We as users want our car to be a certain color of interior, a certain size, and quite a large number of options, and modern manufacturing must provide that. Mr. Teuchert touched upon this trend in his speech. We, as line manufacturers for automotive industry, must build a new type of conveyor-free assembly. That's the concept of Industry 4.0. And 4 months ago, we signed the first contract with one of the largest Russian automotive manufacturers for the delivery of a conveyor-free line. A conveyor-free line, by the way, is where the body is not moving to be welded by robots. On the contrary, mobile robots are used that provide all the logistics. Speaking about Russia, I would like to emphasize our cooperation with KAMAZ. Indeed, this company is strongly aimed at automation, and we signed a strategic agreement, an international strategic agreement with them a month ago that involves the installation of about 2,000 robots for their manufacturing over the next 7 years. That's one of the most interesting and breakthrough projects in Russia for us. Thank you. Thank you. And before beginning the second round, I would like to invite all of you to come up with questions for the discussion with the public and the audience, please. After the second round, we will open the discussion for everyone. Please think about your questions. Mr. Teuchert, what are the most promising dimensions in the mobility area from the BMW perspective? What is the situation in these dimensions in the Russian market specifically, and what do you think is standing in the way of further development at maximum speed, so to say, using an automotive term in Russia?
One mega trend is electrification. Let me just give you some facts and figures about that. So 1972, BMW launched the first electric car during the Olympic Games, and it was front running of the sportsman. And then for many, many years, you could not hear anything about electrification. Meanwhile, BMW is a pioneer in electrification. We started our project with the holistic approach of the i3 with carbon fiber, ultra light, 300 kilogram less than other cars. And of course, it's a new technology, which was also a risk on our side to implement this. In 2017, we sold 100,000 electrified cars all over the world, and in total 200,000. So we are one of the biggest, if not the biggest, manufacturer for electrified cars in the premium segment. So when it comes to the utilization, you see many of those cars in the car sharing area. When I came back to Russia, I was very surprised to see that car sharing is now a big topic in Moscow and in St. Pete. We know car sharing from our own company Drive Now in Europe, where we have meanwhile 1 million customers, 6,000 cars, and 900 of them are 100% electric. And in Russia, we launched also the first project with U-Drive. You can see BMW here on the street, and we launched also the first electric cars in car sharing. But when it comes to legislation, then we see that there is a lot of room for improvement, because we are talking about road taxation, we are talking about recycling fee, we are talking about import duties, we are talking about charging infrastructure, which is the most relevant if you want to charge the car. And meanwhile, you can even adjust a charging on the lightning on the streets, which makes sense, but then you have to ensure that the car could be parked there, which is in Moscow at the moment impossible. So you have additional support, but it's not 100% clear, and it's not 100% driven by the government. And we just heard recently that Russia announced the new strategy for 2025. Actually, BMW also announced for 2025 that we will have 25 electrified models, and 50% out of them full electric, which means we are planning to sell 25% of our whole sales all over the world electrified, which is then between 500 and 700,000 cars a year. Russia is planning to have between 10 and 15,000 units per year, and 100,000 until 2025. If you look at the current situation, the electric car park in Russia is 1,700 units. Last year, 95 units have been registered. And without additional support, not only for local manufacturers, but for electric cars in general, there will be no demand. There will be no demand from the customer side, and they will not start buying these cars.
Just a very brief question, please, with a very brief answer. Electric cars, who are the main competitors, and how is Tesla doing from the point of view?
I have to say Tesla for sure is a manufacturer who has driven electromobility from its own, because they only focus on this. They have nothing else. So we have to do our regular business, and we have to invest in the future on the side. And we have to lose an image for 102 years, and Tesla is able to test around even with the customers a bit, but they helped to make electrified mobility really accessible and usable. Who has tried an electrified car today? Who had this experience from your side? Just raise your hand. Mm-hmm. Okay, one. I can only tell you, please try it. Sit in an electric car, try it out. You will have a big smile in your face, because it's really exciting driving that car. But you need the infrastructure and you need the support.
Okay. Это очень легко сейчас.
Now it's I'm come back again to Mr. Vlasov. How this development looks in Germany nowadays? What barriers they exist for mobile mobility? In general, in Germany, everything looks very well, as always. So we cannot doubt in this. Why Mr. Representing Siemens is laughing here? Well, to be serious, everything is moving in the right direction in Germany, but there are certainly small barriers for the development of these new technologies. One of these barriers, as strange it may be, is the access to internet, although we are a modern country and do a lot. But unfortunately, not everywhere there is a speed internet, stationary internet. And what's important for various mobile applications and machinery, it's not everywhere we have the mobile internet. For instance, if you drive by train from Berlin to Hanover, it's 2 hours by train. During 1 hour, you cannot use mobile internet, but there are people living there on this way, and they have houses, and this is a problem which I hope will be solved in the coming 20 or 30 years. And there is another barrier which hinders a little bit the technological development is the strong influence of policy. I believe that policy, I believe that policy certainly is necessary, but it's because sometimes business does not take the right decisions. But in the last 10, 15 years, our politicians have begun strongly, be strongly involved in the technological things and take some strong decisions. And they have decided that in the coming 10 or 15 years, we will completely remove the engine, the traditional engine. How can they take these solutions? How do they know? In the last year, during the coalition negotiations, they were seriously discussing an issue whether they have to cancel this engine in Germany. Certainly, there should be some political influence, but we have to make it milder, and they have to think more about praising some development of new technologies and not be against the new technologies. By the way, here in Russia, we can criticize Russia for certain things, but what I like among the politicians here in Russia, they do not completely have any hostility towards the new technology here. They like everything new and modern and support it. And I would like our politicians also to take the example from the Russian politicians, and so that they would appreciate the new things, the new developments. I'm prepared to prolong the time for another minute because it's very nice to hear that, because I completely agree with this. No, I'm not going to continue because Mr. Dr. Kyle is here, the representative for our federal government, and I do not want to criticize the federal government. Okay, let us give the floor to the next speaker, Mr. Ibek from Gas Group. You are planning to start the use of unmanned trucks here in Russia. When we will see the first unmanned Gazelle on the Russian market?
The legislation, the whole environment must be there. We talked about that, and will it be possible in Russia? Yes, will be possible, because of exactly the reasons which Vlasov brought up. The light tower project, we call it like that, Russia is doing, is helping to implement new technologies. We have a CNG strategy now for a couple of years, and it is really rolling out. If you go back to Germany, if you look at the use of gas instead of diesel or petrol, it is not happening because there's just not the foundation made for it. If you look at electrification, there's a clear strategy of the government to do that. We will have buses running in Moscow by end of this year, fully electrified with fast charging. They are connected. The next step is that we will have dedicated lanes, and then we will drive autonomous. The same for commercial goods, as I said it before. If you have planned routes, if you deliver bread, if you deliver other goods every day, every week in the same route, you can plan that. You can build the infrastructure for it, and I'm sure we will see probably in 3-4 years also in Russia the first lanes with autonomous driving. If you go to China, you see it there. If you go to some other cities on special projects, they have that. And we will have that also available. We must make it affordable. We must make it affordable. It must be done with standard technologies. That's what we are implementing. We are using systems which are available today. We connect them together with software we are developing, and I trust that the Russian government, the Russian legislation will give us the opportunities to implement it, and that will bring us probably ahead of even some European countries. And if you look at the acceptance of digitalization in Russia and you compare it with Germany, for example, and I'm a German, sometimes you go back. If you go home on the weekend, you go back, right? And you go back in a world which is not developing that fast, and that is a huge possibility for the Russian economy to go with that, to go with these trends, and all Russian companies which are in industry, they should really take part. We must go ahead. We shouldn't wait. We should go and jump ahead.
Spasiba, thank you. Dr. Epstein, как германа
Thank you, Dr. Epstein. As the Russian-German Trade Chamber, we know a lot about the intentions of Siemens and a dozen other German companies of developing high-speed highways in Russia, Moscow, Kazan, Chelyabinsk, Ekaterinburg. I would also like to mention it, since we are here in the Urals, what is the situation with them, and what is Siemens planning for the Russian railways market in general? It is a complicated question, but a good one. We could spend a whole day talking and arguing about it. High-speed driving, I've already mentioned Sapsan. It is a symbol of railway transportation modernization, and I believe that it's going to be the railway transportation that's the main means of transportation in Russia. So from this perspective, we're paying a lot of attention is paid to the development of this industry. Over the past 10 years, we contributed to the development of transportation machine building in the Urals with our joint venture, Ural Locomotives. This is a company that not only manufactures electrical locomotives of the highest quality and latest generation with great engines. We are also manufacturing here, together with our partners, Sinara Group. We are manufacturing Lastochka trains that are spreading well in the Russian market, and we are ready to localize high-speed trains manufacturing here. Not Sapsan ones. We are ready to create here, using the engineering center venue, the second generation Sapsan with the speed of over 300 kilometers per hour. That's making the Russian cities bringing them closer to each other. So our task is we have united as a German business and founded the German initiative of developing the high-speed transportation in Russia, because infrastructure costs of high-speed transportation are incredible, and we need to save here. Every ruble we save here eventually will make tickets more available to a wider population. And I think that in this area we have started developing with the right speed and with the right support, and I think we have a great prospects here in Russia. We have had such negotiations at Innoprom and at Innotrans in Berlin. This development that has to do with infrastructure and brings entities together through Industry own, and it makes it possible to save infrastructure costs this way. Okay, Mr. Bendish, you are welcome. We all know very well that Russia has a very relevant topic, startups. Is very interesting. So in the area of agriculture, for example, some of the startups are also working on unmanned tractors and doing remote analysis of the chemical composition of soils with quadrocopters. How do you assess the prospects of such technologies in Russia, and are you cooperating with any of these startups? Startuppers, a nice word, a very Russian word. Startuppers are very creative people. So where do they come from? They are often graduates or even students of universities and other higher education institutions. So we are closely cooperating with these colleges, and we are trying to identify such people early and work with them before they become our competitors with their ideas. There is a kind of struggle here, who is going to be the first. And their ideas are mostly based on software solutions. Young people like sitting in front of the computer and developing software that bring something together, connect things, and use information from all sources that are no longer available for us, more adult people. If we're talking about household applications, we see an apartment. We have a fridge, a TV, an oven, a coffee machine, ventilation and air conditioning system, or a security and access control system, and they are all made by different manufacturers, and yet you can still create a smart home. There are solutions that connect all of this, and you can manage it and control it all through your iPhone. You are driving home, and there was a question asked, what do you do when the car is driving on its own? Well, I can make coffee ready by the time I reach home. It will smell nice, and the dinner will be warmed up. The temperature will be comfortable for me, and maybe even the cat will get its feed in its plate. And the same is happening across all other industries. The agriculture as well. We have a tractor, harvester, sprayer, and a plow, and so on and so forth. But we cannot force the farmer to purchase everything from the same manufacturer. He uses various vendors, and eventually all these articles of machinery must interact. It's a cross-functional task. It doesn't depend on a single manufacturer. And here there is a chance for young people to use innovative solutions to connect all that and create widely available standards to avoid the situation that happened with mobile chargers. Even the same manufacturer, when they change models, the slot for mobile chargers is different. It's absurd. Thank you very much. And Mr. Tarinch from Schenker. Schenker is a transportation concern that operates almost in all countries around the globe. So you are welcome. Please assess the level of technology and innovative content in this industry in Russia compared to other countries. Maybe, for example, compared to China and the USA and Germany.
Thank you. The technology level certainly depends on the possibility of consolidation of the market, standardization, and business media, business environment. If we are speaking about China now, e-commerce is a driving force in the development of this area in China. And for instance, as to technological capacities and business environment, China is now have definitely ahead of United States, which was the pioneer in this field. As to Germany, here we have a very high level of technological capacities related to the industrial logistics. In Europe in general, it is a very high level of container terminals, assistance of automation. The first terminal of this type was built in Rotterdam, and the system of ferry transportation which is operating. But when we are considering the situation in Russia here, possibly there is no, to a certain extent, a factor of the business environment which helps to develop and implement the new technologies. Not only new technologies, if we even are speaking about old technologies like container transportations, which are like multimodal type of transport, is operating in Europe for dozens of years. In Russia, the distances are very, very long, and it's they have to transport in by railway, which is industrialization of the transport industry. And in RGD, they built it as their strategic plan, but so much time has passed and there is nothing in this respect. It doesn't mean that there are no technological solutions. The business environment doesn't operate, documentation, turnover, etc. The business environment cannot live, and this is one of the opportunities for Germany to help Russia to implement this technology and make a jump of a kind in using these modern technologies for cargo transportation. Thank you, Mr. Kopishnikov from KUKA. Is also very actively developing the mobility field. KUKA has a KUKA mobile platform, KUKA navigation solution. Could you please tell us what it means and how it is implemented here in Russia? Perhaps in a couple of words I will explain what it is, and later I will tell why we need it. First of all, we are speaking about absolutely autonomous mobile platforms which are moving on the production site and can take their own decisions for certain actions. It's a key element for Industry 4.0, which is changing the production sites, the production capacities nowadays everywhere in the globe. I can, for instance, tell you how a modern aircraft production looks, where on a certain places, certain elements are being assembled. If we're speaking about new production sites, we're speaking about pure fields, just a shop, production shop without any equipment, and the desire of the final customer. For instance, the mobile robots, they install various necessary equipment there, which is making the assembly of various parts of an aircraft, and then we can remove this equipment and install new equipment, and we can assemble endless number of airplanes there. We have implemented it for Boeing, for instance, recently, and we hope that other production producers will implement this for their own products. I also mentioned some automobile lines, which since Henry Ford used the conveyor type of production, but now we are refusing from this conveyor manufacturing, and we use it conveyorless assembly by applying these mobile robots, which do it until the complete product. Thank you. And if you have any questions, please, to our panelists, please, there is the first question.
Thank you. Okay, maybe Ivars Taurinch can answer that. Oh, I see. There was no translation. So the question was, if we think not only about autonomous or unmanned machines, but about this is one of the areas where Schenker is actively working with IRM. We are already testing convoy transportations in Germany on A9 highway. So technically, everything is operable. But nowadays, more attention is paid to integrating this solution into the society, into the space, and externally, and also the situation with the driver who needs to be doing something during this highway transportation. What does the driver do? How do they feel? What can they be involved in? This psychological aspect is being researched in a lot of detail to understand what is going to happen when this solution is going to be scaled. And DB has a good practice when locomotives are now mostly automatically driven, so we need to occupy the locomotive driver somehow, and we can spread this practice to highway. So it's almost like a train on a highway, but all other participants of this transportation of the traffic must also understand how to behave when they encounter this convoy transportation, how they can overcome it, how it behaves, and accordingly, in a way, this will take some time for this testing to understand in detail how it's going to work. Okay, and also Mr. Einbeck from GAZ.
Of platooning is the higher density you get through on a road, and if you take the A9 in Germany, it is an autobahn which is extremely busy, and you have the platooning. You shorten the distance between the trucks, so you just run 1.5 meter distance, and you are basically saving road space with it, and that's, I think, not really the issue in Russia. To do away with the driver, if you do platooning, we are not that far. So that will take more time. That the trucks are probably, the first one is running with the driver, and the second one, the third one, unmanned. That is coming soon. But platooning, I think, for high density, probably ring road in Moscow, things like that. But for the long distances, I also do not see the advantage, as you have the driver in the truck anyhow.
Хорошо. Есть еще вопросы, пожалуйста?
Okay, any more questions, please? Yes, we have a question from this participant. Sven, you are welcome. Well, I have a question to Mr. Teuchert from BMW. I suppose that within your concern you are discussing the issue of promoting an electrical motor. So do you have any thoughts inside BMW approximately on what year is BMW planning to discontinue internal combustion engine sales on cars in Germany? I'm not asking you to discontinue that. I'm just asking if you have thought about it.
Announced, as I said, that 2025 we will have a share of 25% electrified cars, which means 75% are still combustion engines. And even from the 25% electrified cars, maybe 50% will be still hybrid cars, which means you have combustion engine and electric engine combined. So from our perspective, there might be a chance if you come to a level of 50% share, then the customer and the consumer behavior will change. If the infrastructure is right, if the accessibility of charging is given, if also, let's say, the range of the cars is on a level comparable to a diesel engine or to electrified engine, then the customer is ready to jump. Hybrid is a bridging technology which we use to get used to electrified cars, but still the amount of full electric cars is so low, and also in comparison to regular cars a bit more expensive due to the battery, that it takes from our perspective at least 20 to 30 years until we overcome the level of 50 or 60% electrified cars. So which means we believe that in the next 20 or 30 years we will still have combustion engines available, and we will not change by 100%.
Okay, ça really еще вопросы?
Okay, any more questions from the public? You are welcome. Dear colleagues, I have the following question. What contribution do you think Russian manufacturers or other companies can make in providing the mobility of the future? In what industries, by what technologies and production capacities? Thank you. A very good question. Who is the first to answer? I think that if the 2 or 3 of the panelists can give brief answers. Mr. Ivek, you're welcome.
Business got to be defined by the OEMs. What will be their core business in future technologies? And it must be in the powertrain area, though electric drives, battery systems, that got to be developed by the OEMs, probably jointly in corporations, and starting to happen now. Though we will have electromotor in Russia, we got to have battery system made in Russia. That is basically the standard you got to have. Then on the autonomous driving features, of course, you need to see what you buy from international suppliers to look at the economy of scale. But I see today already very good camera systems, radar systems to come, and probably ultrasonic systems which we have in the country. So these kind of technologies got to be made in Russia to be able to be with the trend. We should not be dependent on purchases for these kind of key components. And we have the intellectual know-how to do it, and the technology got to be developed. Software is the key. At the end of the day, it is software, it is know-how, and we talked about the startups and the startuppers and what they are doing. They got to be integrated, and at the end of the day, it is the intelligence you got to have in the country for it. But also core manufacturing. We do a battery systems pack. We want to have that in our own hands. The cells is another subject. That needs to be, I think, a joint effort if we do even cells in Russia.
Yeah, Sven Vlasa.
Ответ на вопрос, в каких областях
The answer to the question where the Russian companies may participate in, it's very easy, this answer. In any aspect, in any field, nobody prohibits participation in any field. Back to the topic of container transportation, when semi-trailers are being transported by railways, there are some developments of the Russian companies of the cars which are specified for this technology to the Russian railways, and their technology is more functional and provides the opportunity to place any semi-trailers. There are already these developments. They have to be implemented in the production only.
charging infrastructure, if you're talking about autonomous driving, you also need to have the connectivity. And connectivity means you have to have a net which at least have 5G, otherwise the data cannot be transported from one car to the other to make it safe. So which means we also have to invest in the mobile infrastructure here in Russia.
Кто-то еще?
Ja.
Anyone else? Mr. Epstein, Mr. Kapishnikov? I would like to add that the localization of our production is already achieving 80%. We have 150 suppliers here. In the future, we have to jointly develop the software here in the Russian Federation so that we could overcome the barrier of those who possesses these initial codes of this software. Here we have a chance for a more active cooperation, and here we can achieve a new level of cooperation of various systems for the future. Mr. Kapishnikov, for the Russian companies, I would like to say, here we have the green fields beginning from where we can apply the mobile platforms, adding by the development of the platforms themselves. For instance, we have definite examples on application in the banking fields. And I would like to end with a small story from my personal life and tell all the participants that I give you practically 30 seconds to each of you for one question related to this small story. In 2004, when I was working in China, I spent 1 year in the Michigan University in Arbor in a business school, and my children, 2 boys, were small then. And once on Thursday, I think, we went to the city of Detroit. Early in the morning, my children woke us up, and we were the first, nearly the first one to the museum. I met the director who was meeting us there. And after 3 months, I started to be American already. And I asked a typical American question, Mr. Director, there's господин...
What is it? Я тогда работал журналистом, я ему дал мой бизнес.
I worked as a journalist then. I gave him my business card. I worked for Stern magazine then. And he looked at this business card and he was surprised or not surprised. He said, well, Stern, let us walk to the beginning of our exhibition in the museum. And he showed us carriages from the 19th century. Looking at me, he says, well, this is the situation where you are in your mass media, with your mass media now. Not a single company which used to produce in the carriages in the 19th century was transformed into modern companies producing cars. So my question to you, whether these large, giant companies like Innoprom or Siemens, my question to you is whether they are able to transform into the newer companies which will be working in the nearest 20, 30 years ahead of us. Please give me a short answer, yes or no, and a couple of sentences related to your own company. Maybe we'll start with Innoprom. Mr. Toyshat.
And we will change more than the last 100 years. So we will go to mobility services. Young people don't want to own cars anymore. Young people don't want to have a driving license anymore. So if we would like to keep our customers, we have to offer mobility services which everybody can use, and we are ready for that.
Dr. Bendish, компания Class.
Да, конечно, я уверен, что
Class company. Yes, I'm sure that our company will survive this shift of direction, that our company can survive this change management in all dimensions, because we are working for the people. The things we manufacture are eventually making foods, and the world's population is growing, so everything we are doing, all of us together, mobility, digitization, and so on, we mustn't forget that we also have the people. So when all cars are going to be unmanned, we need to come up with new activities for people, and there are so many directions of development, maintenance, service, and so much we haven't even thought of today. Okay, great. Sven Vlasov. Those who are always offering new innovations and those who are involved in improving the existing things will probably disappear. I think it's quite simple. And what about Siemens representative, Dr. Epstein? Ingenuity is our slogan. We have been here in Russia for over 160 years. We have reshaped many times. If we are now dreaming about airplanes fueled by solar panels, it could sound as a nuclear-powered car. But Siemens's ingenuity is different from that of many other companies, because we are always taking innovative ideas, and we are spending a lot of resources for developing them. Thank you, Mr. Kapishnikov Kuka. Our company is driving the innovations for manufacturing at other companies, and I know they're used in our manufacturing venues as well, so I am certain we will survive. Mr. Ibeck, gas.
The most resources? Is it Apple, is it Microsoft, is it Google, or is it the hardware manufacturers? And we will see a change, and not everybody in the hardware manufacturing will survive. It will be the ones which have the resources to be on par with these people who can provide the services the customers need.
Kampagne DB Schenker, Gasparin Taurinsch.
Schenker, Mr. Taurish. Of course, it would be great to learn on other people's mistakes, but you also have to learn on your own mistakes. I can see the future in a positive light here. One of the new technologies is 3D printing, which is changing not only manufacturing but also logistics in a drastic way. And we are now launching a service where you can order your 3D printing model at Schenker. This service is already available. Okay, thank you all. I thank all participants, and I think that if we are strongly positioned in today, we have also peaked in the future. As the moderator, I saw that you were very attentive, and I am thankful to all the speakers for finding the time and for their good preparation. Thank you for the questions. So please let us leave this hall quite quickly, because Minister Manturov is going to come here with his investment council now. Thank you and have a good day.